Welcome back to another episode of Bridging the Gap. I am your host, Bridger Rogers, and today we have none other than Mr. Paul Daley. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, bro.
Dude, we're looking forward to this. You flew all the way from the East Coast.
East Coast, DC.
DC, man. So guys, we're really going to dive into a lot of good stuff on this podcast. To quickly introduce Paul, he has a very strong background in running and growing sales teams. You and I actually first crossed paths, which we'll talk about when you were coming in. You're doing a lot of sales team management for Brian Page, working with Caleb Maddox. And at the time, you were trying to decide between two different sales teams. And we'll talk about vehicle, because I know that what you're doing now with consulting and helping a lot of info product people scale. The number one thing that I think that you share with me is like making sure you're getting into the right vehicle. And so I'm excited to jump into this podcast, guys. Stay tuned because we are going to be diving in throughout this entire podcast on sales, the art of sales. You also created a course inside of Iman's program, Educate. I've seen your stuff in there. So we'll talk about sales. We'll talk about building a team, because one of the things I love about you is you're rolling strong. Right. You got a good team. And so, Paul, welcome to the podcast.
It's nice to have you, man. Nice to be here, I should say.
Yeah, totally, man. So let's back it up. Like, how did you first get started in the whole high ticket industry?
I kind of fell my way into it, bro. I was I'll skip all the non-online stuff, but I was in the software world. I was like an account exec, and then got my way into like a small VP role for a small company. And I had a buddy who had an agency. And this is before like having an agency was a real thing. This is more so during the Ty Lopez agency days.
So this is like 2015?
No, this is a little later, probably when were the Ty days?
Dude, I feel like he went viral summer of 2015. I remember seeing his ads here in my garage.
So this is like lagging behind. This is more like 2018-ish. I start to see it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I got into it I got into it right around COVID. So 2020, right, maybe just before in 2019, I started a sales consulting business.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was my first thing ever in the online world. And it wasn't bad. I think I made like a, 8-10 grand a month or something like that right away for a couple months. But I met someone who, this is when I started to find, I never watched Ty, never watched Iman, never watched any of like the guys who bring people into the space, just had a friend who was doing it and knew about marketing agencies, ended up having a couple marketing agencies be some of my first clients for a sales consulting thing, and brought someone on who ended up becoming a partner in a marketing agency that I started. That was like my first real business. The sales consulting stuff was almost like me learning what the space even was, if you will. Started SMMA, got that up. We got up to north of, $100-something thousand a month in the first 6 months, and then had a really messy sale on that. It's a fun story on its own.
You sold the company.
Yeah, kind of. It was a messy sale, man. Yeah, selling a business, and, what's his name? Roland Frazier. That whole Roland Frazier movement. I love the whole finance, seller finance, and all this stuff. But unless you know what you're doing when you sell a business, the Roland Frazier guys will F you. And there's a lot of that kind of went down in my cell. I learned a lot about selling a business, and learned a lot about business in general. Selling a business is almost as complicated as running a business. And so anyway, I had that, and then doing all that stuff and learning. It's not even the sale of that business. It was just what I've learned at that point. Yeah. Gave me the leverage or the credibility, whatever you want, the authority needed to start working with some higher end guys in the space. Learned a lot about sales at that point. Started working with Caleb on the Brian offer because I had a couple of Instagram reels that were like just how to handle random objections, how to do random. I had 3 or 4, and they all popped off really, really well.
How many views?
35 to 50,000 on each of them, which for like,
that's solid for,
I had like 700 followers on Instagram
back in the day. Yeah.
Anyway, they were very niche videos, right? So Caleb watched all of them and then hit me up, and then he, this is a month after I actually started working with Iman as Iman's sales manager. And so started playing with that stuff. And that was my entry, if you will, into the high ticket sales world. Yeah.
So this is crazy, guys. So give you a little background. He was at the time trying to decide between going full-time with Iman Gadzhi.
Yes.
How do you say his last name? Gadzhi. Okay. I always mess this up, dude.
No one ever gets it right.
Yeah. No one ever gets his last name right, but Iman's sales team and then Brian Page's sales team. So you've got these two offers that you run at simultaneously, where you're running both of them. And when you were looking at the different opportunities, what made you decide to eventually go with Iman? And then I know that you recently ventured off. You're doing your own thing now, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But for 2 years, you're running his team. But when you were at that fork in the road, I think a lot of people watching this might be at a fork in the road. How did you differentiate?
First thing, I just want to be clear. It's not like I ventured off we had an amazing 2 years, and then the company started outgrowing me. And so he asked me to leave. It's like a brother saying like, hey bro, you're not the best person to lead the business anymore.
Okay. Wow.
I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I'm very upfront about saying that.
Okay.
Iman, I still have nothing but love in my heart for him. And I think he would say the exact same thing. But a lot of people look at leadership in companies like almost like dating somebody. I don't think it's ever like wrong to say the company outgrew me kind of thing. You know, that's the whole goal of having a business.
Yep.
But in the crossroads, what it came down to is both offers, if you will, were really, really, really solid. That Brian Page offer was crazy solid.
Dude, that was insane, right? Dude. Yeah.
And that company, what I will give Caleb credit to is it felt like every single day you ran a marathon as fast as you could and you were left with nothing in the tank every single day.
Yep.
But what I saw was that with Caleb, so the whole thing came down to, I wasn't really picking a company. I picked an entrepreneur that I wanted to tie myself to. Okay. And so with Caleb and I think Iman will both be billionaires one day. Generally. I think they're both on the track. And out of all the people I've met in my entire lives, they are two that stand among the crowd. But I think they'll get there in different ways. I think Caleb, and neither way is bad, but Caleb will do 100, 1,000, 10,000 things, but one of them will pop and do really, really well. He is an experimenter. He's a tinkerer. Who is it? Who starts with Edison? Thomas Edison.
Yeah, Thomas Edison.
Right? He's an Edison. He just wants to play with new things, and eventually one of those will be the light bulb. Iman is the exact opposite. Iman was someone who he'll become a billionaire, but he'll do 5 to 10 things, and every single one of them will be a huge business because he will go deep. He'll spend time on it. He'll go in, making it as amazing as possible, and he'll gnaw on it, kind of thing. And the reason I went with Iman, twofold. Number one, I just genuinely felt closer to Iman. I think Caleb's awesome, and when we had dinners and such, I could just feel that I wasn't on the same wavelength. I think Caleb just thinks differently than I am, than I do. There's nothing wrong with that. It's probably why he's more successful. But I didn't sync with him as well as I sunk with Iman. Iman sunk like a brother. Iman's a great guy. I can't say anything negative about Iman. But on top of that, Iman also was a builder, a long-term site guy. And that is what I like doing. I like getting into something and knowing that I can build for a long, long, long time. Not that I'm going to do something a couple weeks and then have that completely gutted to do something else.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So let's talk about the journey of diving in and starting to work with Iman. Like, well, first off, did you just apply to be a sales manager? There's got to be some
he was looking on it. This is back when he was small, right?
Okay. So, what's small though?
I forget how many subs. Like it was either 80 or 180,000.
Okay, subs. So he's 100. Yeah, it's not super huge.
He's niche agency celebrity. Yeah, not celebrity yet.
Yeah,
like he at this point you could say Iman is a celebrity.
Yeah, he's online celebrity. Yeah,
exactly. So he was looking for a sales manager, put something out on his Instagram, and I just DM'd him, and then I became a part of the hiring process. I did 2 interviews and then had a call with Iman, and he gave me the position. So it was very native. It was really aligned with what I was doing. I was working with someone else in the agency space called Joel. And between what I was doing with Joel, between my agency and Iman's offer.
Joel Irway or no?
Joel Kaplan.
Oh, Joel Kaplan. Okay, yeah, I've heard of him, yeah.
I was on Joel's leadership team, and I had agency experience, info experience, working with agencies, and then Iman was looking to build out a sales team for that stuff, right?
Right.
And so it's really aligned. So it was pretty,
totally
organic.
That's cool. So you joined the position, and I know we're not going to dive into the specific numbers. We know Iman makes a lot of money, right? We all know that. We know he makes millions, tens of millions. But how big did you grow the team? Because that's where I'm most impressed is your leadership ability and how you're able to grow the team. Like, where was the team when you joined, and where was the team when you kind of?
Yeah, the team was. When I came on, it was 2 closures, and when I left, it was just a lot bigger than that. Okay, I don't want to get into the specifics of it, but I can truly say that I've hired for not just Iman, but over a lot of companies I've worked with over the last few years, probably close to at least between 600 to 1,000 people kind of thing.
Wow, 600 to 1,000 people.
I've hired a lot of people.
You've hired a lot of people.
I've tried a lot of things with hiring. I've tried internship programs. I've tried different testing, different groups processes. I've done a lot. And I've helped a lot of companies implement it. And I've fired a lot of people. I've had a lot of misreads, a lot of mistakes, and a lot of experience with bad people, good people, top tier talent, people that I thought would be top tier talent. They're lazy, you name it. I've kind of experienced it. And so leadership is like the one thing at this point that, sorry.
Yeah. I was going to say, distill it down for me, right? Because that's a lot of hires, right? That's probably 5, 6 times, 10 times what I've done. And so for you, one of the things that I love studying is like, high performing salespeople. So, a lot of those people have been salespeople. Walk me through when you're hiring now, what is your decision-making framework that you use when evaluating a potential sales hire?
Okay. So first thing that I instantly look for is how upfront about their sales skill they are, right? It's almost like the Chihuahuas and the German Shepherds. So salespeople that get on and they talk about how much revenue they've created or everything they've done for different businesses are almost always the first people that I nix out. Realistically, so there's a couple ways to look at it. Number one, you would never go into a hiring process. If you ever wanted a sales job, you'd probably connect with business owners that would refer you. You would get an inside kind of backdoors thing. And so that the best closers in the space are not going to be applying cold, right?
Yeah, they're warm. Warm
exactly. So knowing that the best are not in the space, then you only have the worst to good, right?
Yeah.
And the worst to good, the way I look at it is the good reps never brag. They know their place. They know that they're not top tier.
Yeah.
They know they're good.
Yeah.
And so they're going to hold their ground. They're going to be confident. They know how to answer your questions. They know how to approach the interview. The worst reps are the reps that are like, I've created $300,000 in revenue doing this and this and this. And my close rate was X, Y, and Z. The ones that brag as much as they can. And this is a wholesome rule for life. Realistically, what I've learned is that the people that brag about having the most amount of money are probably the people who have the least. And the people who brag about all their successes and all the things that they've done tend to be the people who are, the least. And that's because if your success is not bragging for you, then people feel the need to do it for themselves. And so one of my best friends, a good mentor of mine always said, let others brag for you kind of thing. And so the best reps would have people bragging on your behalf to get you in. The reps under that aren't bragging. They might not have someone bragging for them yet, but you can tell in their demeanor. It's almost like, I'm sure if you saw someone who killed a man, you probably see it in their eyes. You can tell when someone is in someone's eyes, this guy knows what he's up to.
Yeah.
The loud people are the first people to almost always go. That's the first thing I would look for.
Yeah. And that's super helpful. And so that, I think the reason I ask that is I have a lot of sales reps that watch my podcast that I'm working with as private clients. And I'm constantly curious to see what are the business owners looking for, right? Obviously I've hired dozens of sales reps, but it's always cool to hear from another perspective. And what other character traits would you look for in a sales rep, right? Because obviously we've got those three categories. And let's say someone is just getting started and they don't have any experience. What's the best thing they can say to potentially get a shot at potentially coming in? Because I know when I didn't have a ton of experience, I was able to, sell for Todd Brown was my first job. And just through pure grit and just my charisma, my ability to communicate on the interview, they gave me a shot.
Yeah. So 2 questions. I'll answer the latter first. But the first thing is, if you are new and you don't know what you're talking about, the best thing to do is just be very upfront about that and be like, hey, Bridger, to be straight with you, man, I am brand new to this space. And while I might not know how to handle every objection, and while I might not know what your prospects are looking for, the best frames or anything, what I can tell you is that I will be the hardest worker you have on the team. I will learn faster than anyone you have on the team. And I'll be more committed to learning than anyone you have on the team. And if you invest in me, almost like a stock, I promise you I'll stay around for a long time and I'll give you long-term returns.
Yeah.
I think
that's good.
Yeah. I think
that's really good.
Thank you. The thing to realize if you're new is that a business owner is investing in you, not time. Everyone thinks it's time. Hey, I'll work for free. Just, teach me, blah, 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 which is a terrible deal, right? What they're investing is lost cash because when you come in, you're going to fuck up deals that other closers would have closed or setters would have set. And so they're investing lost profits for you in the long term. And if you can paint essentially saying, hey, I know you're going to lose up front, but I will pay it back in the long run, then all they have to at that point decide is, does this person seem like they have the competence on this interview based on how they're approaching this interview to actually learn? And so if you seem humble but confident, deadly confident but humble, they will see this guy probably has the attributes needed. But if you come on and you're just a loud, kind of obnoxious about how your background's selling sunglasses or whatever it is, et cetera, they're not going to think that this guy has the aptitude probably needed to grow and be worth losing that front. The first question you asked was...
The first question was just what other things are you looking for when you're hiring top tier talent besides the humble, besides, not bragging? A lot of it really so you have when you're hiring, you have hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills would be legal, operations / development, right? You have HR, HR is actually less so, but imagine,
illegal. You can't hire someone for law just because you think that they're going to fit the culture well. Culture is important, but you have to hire someone that actually knows how to do the job. Website development is a hard skill. Content editing is a hard skill.
Copywriting
Is a hard skill. But soft skills are client success, are sales, are HR to an extent. Leadership is a soft skill. You can't really judge a soft skill too well until someone starts doing it. And so the thing that you look for in an interview at its core, number one, you look to see if the person has the competence and the aptitude. I look for three things. Number one, competence and aptitude. Do they seem like someone who is competent enough and fast learning enough for me to put time into, or my team to put time into to train up, right?
Yep.
Number two is detail orientation. So are you someone who, example given, we used to run processes where I would have people wear certain colored shirts on different calls or different video interviews or whatever be it. And I remember one guy submitted a video where the instructions of the video were wear a white shirt, do this, this, and this. And the guy wore a pink shirt. And he said, before you close the video, I know you said wear a white shirt, but I wanted to stand out. So I'm doing X, Y, and Z and wearing a pink shirt. And I understand where he's coming from, but as a interviewer, the first thing I see is you can't follow the most basic instructions. So I wouldn't want to work with you because I feel like every single thing that I would tell you to do or ask you to do, you're going to constantly be bicker back, right? And so can you follow detail? Because the last thing that, especially with sales reps suck at CRM organization, lead organization. They suck at updating their stuff. And so if you can't follow details, you're probably not going to be able to fit into the operations of the team too well. If you can't, if you don't have competence or high aptitude, I'm going to have to tell you something 50 times that I would only have to tell someone else twice or once, right? And then the third thing is almost like dating. It's just culture. And so example given, a company that you are probably going to work well with is not necessarily a company I might work well with because you are looking for different things in the company than I'm looking for. And so the best people in the space, when they get good at hiring, what they get really good at is essentially understanding what your goals are in your work environment, what you want in life, and if that is something that the company actually can offer, and if that is almost something that fits into the personality of the company, right? I think the personality of companies or the culture is a broad word, but think about the company as like a human being with a personality. You wouldn't date every single person and the company wouldn't either, right? And so it's almost like finding out, do you as a company sync with the sales rep? And so that's the other thing that they look for.
Yeah, that's good, dude. Give me like a 30,000 foot overview, right? If you were to give me a couple bullet points of sales leadership, right? Because you've led a lot of sales teams. It's an entirely different skill set from actually closing deals. The ability to duplicate yourself and really transform an entire organization. Talk to me about, like, for you, if you were going to teach someone from scratch how to lead a sales team and see high performance from that sales team, what are some non-negotiables as far as things that you're doing on the weekly or the daily to keep that sales team revving?
Yeah. I think Cole Gordon smacked it with this. He calls it like the big five. But in short, the first thing is, daily meetings. I can't tell you how many sales teams I meet that they don't meet every single day, or maybe they only meet for like 10 minutes a day, but they don't train together. They don't go over numbers together. They have no awareness together. And so just overall creating an environment where people are aware and accountable to everyone else's numbers and their own numbers. People are training on the daily, and you're going through calls, or you're going through recent objections, and you're constantly just training. Even professional baseball players and football players train every single day during the off season and on. And so I think a lot of closers, they get into teams and there's no like structure in terms of any daily meetings. And I think that is lethal. And so if you want to just improve your team, literally have Monday through Thursday, Fridays tend to be team calls. Monday through Thursday, how are you pouring in conviction? So in your daily meetings, how are you increasing the conviction that your sales reps have, right? And so are you having to meet with, or are you having client success reps come on? Are you sharing wins from the program, et cetera, right? And then after that, how are you training throughout the week? How are you going through, what are the top 3 objections that your sales reps got the week prior to? And now how are you working on helping them conquer those, or giving them the word tracks to conquer those, right?
Yeah, that's fire.
And so daily meetings and training. Number 2, end of day reports. And so you start your day. I like doing meetings in the beginning of the day when possible, and then you end your day with an end of day report, right? And so just having a full, as a manager, as a closer, what this does, or as a sales rep, it gives you full structure to your day. You start your day with a meeting, you end your day with an end of day report. When you end your day, you don't do anything. You're clocked out, right? Otherwise, sales can become kind of dangerous, and that's when you start to deal with rep burnout. And so you have beginning of day, end of day. That's when people work. That's your clock in, that's your clock out. After that, I don't even want to see you in Slack. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I like that.
As a leader, it gives you really good awareness. I think that most people in the sales, when they start leading sales teams, Their problem is that they're just not aware of anything about the sales team. They don't have end of day reports. They don't have KPI sheets. They don't have any, the proper data tracking. They don't see their reps every single day. They're not, another one would be in the big 3 call reviews. You're not reviewing your reps calls every single, day. You don't know what your reps are saying, what you're not saying. When you saw me on the Brian Page offer, I was reviewing calls all the time.
Yeah. How many calls did you review?
I think I was doing like 8 to 10 a day or something like that.
Dude, you were going nuts. I remember you were actually sending me like takeaways like, dude, I loved when you did this, this, and this. And like, dude, I actually didn't realize I did that.
Yeah. So knowing that most reps, watching your tape as a closer is probably the best thing you can do to become a better closer, right? Knowing that 99% of reps don't do that as a sales leader is kind of your job to do that. And so there's a former guy that was also a sales rep on one of my teams out of camera. You never saw me do this, but I used to review calls all the time when I was leading any sales team I had. And there are 3 things really that a person, especially a sales rep, needs in order to feel comfortable in a company and want to stay with the company. Number 1 is that compensation. Everyone thinks that sales reps need to be paid a lot of money to want to stay. And sales reps are probably the most financially driven people in business. But I would argue that less than financial, what they really care about is becoming better at their skill. Sales reps want to feel like they're growing, like they're being challenged, like they're learning. And then third is that they want to feel like they're doing that with other people that are alike, right? And so the second, that training side, I would argue that you can pay a sales rep 1/4 of what they should be paid. I'm not saying you should do that, but for the sake of the point, if someone could make 20 grand, a lot of sales reps would take 5 grand if they knew that they were getting better every single day and learning. And so if you're pouring into your team with daily call reviews for each rep, every single rep has a call review done. And then they can also see their other call review reps done. So they can watch 4 hours of call reviews every single day if they're not on calls.
That's fire.
And they're learning different objection handling sequences, and they're seeing someone that they look up to really going into the trenches with them and helping them grow. That does so much to inspire a team and to push a team to the next level.
Yeah, I love that, man. Yeah, I found when I was running like Kino's sales team, those are like spot on, right? The daily huddles to increase conviction, get everyone fired up. I found if I didn't do them in the morning, it was kind of like people didn't even start working until I did the sales meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because I tried the Hermosi thing, like start your meetings at like 11 o'clock and do a bunch of deep work. And bro, like the mornings were so unproductive for sales teams. I found that 8 a.m. was like for me, perfect. 8 a.m. Pacific, a little bit later on Eastern.
Hermosi says that, but I'm pretty sure with Gym Launch, he also talked about how his team started at 5 in the morning with their training.
Wow.
So like it's,
and he did a sales training with them for a while.
Yeah. At 5 a.m.
When they weren't performing.
Sure
it was like 5 a.m. Yeah.
I see it like everyone wants to do those deep work sessions and the blocking and everything like that.
Yeah.
I know you have deep work over by your bed. When I was looking at your books, he has a lot of books. If you ever read Bridger's books, Bridger has a ton of books.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
But there's as a sales manager or lead, the deep work stuff is different. Like realistically, at the end of the day, you have to make sure that your team, as soon as the business day starts, is like salivating at their mouth trying to close deals, right? And then you almost have to put them to bed with end of day reports. And then if you see people still in Slack, you almost have to tell them like, get the off Slack, like get out here, regenerate. Sales reps need to, more than most other people in business, they need to sprint when they're on. So like it's, you can't have a sales rep effectively just like going about calls at like 60%.
Yeah.
And sales reps, to be straight with you, bro, are some of like my bane of my existence to an extent. They are the most short-sighted. I was a sales rep for a long time. I can say this because I was the same way, but the most short-sighted, want more money than they deserve. Like everything about them is just short-sighted, right?
Yeah, they can be.
They almost always
are.
And the reason for this, I have a video in my sales program with Iman's company that talks about this, but I call it like I forget the paradox of speed or something. But long story short, if you start a business, it takes a long time for you to actually start to make money.
Yeah.
Right?
Years
to make, let's call it a year to make $10,000 a month on average. There are a lot of people, myself included, that get there faster, and you did too, right? But most people take a while to get to decent cash with the business.
It took me about a year actually when I actually started.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe longer.
And so
18 months.
Right. But okay. So, and then take copywriting even longer to make some serious cash and stuff, right?
Unless you start skill stacking. And this is where a lot of people skip steps.
Yeah. But my point though is sales reps, you can start an offer and make 10 grand like the month after, right?
Yeah.
And so what happens is it kind of fucks what sales reps look at as their like time horizon, because they see that $0 to $10,000 a month takes, call it 45 days. And so they expect $10,000 to $20,000 a month to be pretty much 45 days, because the pattern that they've seen is I go like this. And so I expect to keep going like this.
Yeah.
reality looks like is that the glass ceiling in sales is much lower than business ownership or even copywriting and such like that. You get there faster, but the glass ceiling is lower because I can get into because there's a lot of them, but the main thing to take away from that is that sales reps, the Achilles heel to 99% of them is that they expect growth with the same amount of input that they got to 10K per month, 5K or whatever per month on.
Totally.
And it screws them. And so if you want to get into another thing that you deal with as a sales leader all the time, it's constantly, I don't want to say combating that, but resetting expectation and painting out these long-term horizons. And the more you can train and fulfill and challenge people, the less you have to deal with that. But as a sales lead, that's probably you probably know what I'm talking about exactly. It's the one thing you constantly deal with.
You're constantly selling the vision, selling the dream, right? Yeah, I found that that's also what I teach in my sales training program is that, listen, if you are coming into this with the sole purpose to just be a sales rep, then you're going to be drastically limited in your ability to grow and your ability to earn long-term, right? Like every time that I've gotten into a sales opportunity, it was for one reason. Number one, it was probably for immediate cash flow because my business tanked. So I needed cash flow. So I was hungry to close deals. But the second reason that I was also like willing to not just like push through is because I knew that there were skills that I was missing that was holding my business from getting to where I wanted to go. So I've almost stepped into the sales world as a vehicle for skill acquisition and for almost like just total like hitting the skip button. Because I my first job that I went and closed for was with a marketing company, right? So that I could learn really solid marketing. It was with a guy named Todd Brown, who's like the OG of teaching marketing, right? Mentors Russell Brunson, Cole. And so that was like next level for me. So when I advise the sales reps that I train, I'm like, let's look out 3, 5, 10 years, however far you can look and be like, most people that I found that are really good sales reps have that entrepreneurial fire inside of them. Yeah. But they just don't have the vehicle and the skills. At least the ones that I've seen that are like really good. What are your thoughts? You seem like you disagree maybe.
I don't want to say some of the best reps I totally agree that like a majority of the best
like the
reps.
Like the top 5%.
A majority of them tend to have that entrepreneurial spirit, tend to have that hunger for more. And so it's almost like means to an end. So example given, I don't want to be the best business owner that I can be for the sake of making money. I want to be an amazing business owner because I think that by excelling in business, I'll create authority that allows me that people will respect. And then when I show that respect is all coming from Christ, I'm a Christian. And I think that any of my success comes from blessings from God and Jesus. And so me being successful allows me to grow the kingdom of God. It's a means to an end, right? And so if anything, I chase bringing people to the kingdom of God because I think that's what my life calling is. I use business as a means to do it, right? I think if I was chasing success in business, I would not have you never get what you really chase, or you always get what you chase, whatever the word. Long story short, if I chased success in business, I was only focused on that, my life would be a lot different. How I approached everything would be a lot different. Same with sales. If your whole thing is like, I just want to be a top tier sales rep, that's the only thing I ever want to be on and focus on, I think you'll get smoked by a lot of people who look at sales as a means to an end, knowing like my vision's all the way out here. I just got to do this part to get started, which is what I would argue you've done. Any of the good sales reps I've worked with have had that same mentality of I don't want to be a sales rep when I'm 50. I want to use this to get into the world of business to understand how to play with other stacks. But at the same time, that also goes into what we talked about with sales reps trying to grow too early. I can't tell you how many closers I meet that 6 months into closing, they're like, okay, now I want to start leading a sales team. What do I do now? Kind of thing. It's like, bro, you need to wait 2 more years, and you need to.
What's the timeline you think from setter? Like no sales experience. A lot of guys, my guys are younger, 18 to 25. Yeah. Right. Setter to closer to sales leader, and sales leader to business owner. What would you say?
I don't think that
like a range, like an.
For me to, so when I started, do you want to count like car sales and everything in here or just online sales experience?
I mean, I would just say like, you can share your timeline. And then I would also just say based on what you've seen in the industry from people that work. Like for example, I've seen Cole, he was closing for, 2-3 years at Traffic and Funnels. So I have my own ideal timeline for them to work through, but
I was in the non-online sales world for 10 years before I got into the sales world, and I had a lot of experience. So my timeline was just different, right? But I instead of closing, I started closing for my own business and then use that to catapult myself into a manager position, right? If you are just coming in from scratch in your setting, realistically, what I would say is that how I look at it is it's not timeline, it's two things. Number one is everyone thinks that you have to be the best person on the team to become the next closer or to become a closer or manager. Very often does the best setter or the best closer actually get, the promotion, right?
It's true.
And that's because leading is a selfless act. Being a closer or setter is a selfish act, right? And so it's a very different wavelength. Who you tend to see get promoted are the guys that, if you have a good leader, the guys who get promoted or the girls are the ones who people go to for advice, or they're like, hey, Bridger, how do you do this? Or what would you have said here, right? The people who are naturally training the team, or the people that naturally know the operations of the team, or the people, that on the morning meeting, when this guy speaks or that girl speaks, that, they're listening, even though they're not the leader. Those are the people that end up becoming good leaders and becoming good managers. And so if you're not one of those people, if you're the guy who's like trying to get people to listen to you, but no one's listening yet, I think that's a very good indicator that it's too, premature at this point. And so I think a lot of that just comes from, silently working at getting better and doing the best that you can. And eventually, people will start, when people see that you're good at what you do and that you can help them, people will come and start asking, And so I don't think it's a timeline necessarily. I think it just comes down to, this is what I hate about timeline stuff, bro. Let's say realistically that you were a closer for an offer that got 3 calls a day, right? Versus another version of you was on an offer where you had 15 calls a day. You're going to excel way faster on the 15 calls a day than the 3 calls a day kind of thing, right?
Right.
And so timeline's kind of F to think about, because it's not about time, it's about repetition, how many reps you have in it, how many times you've gone through something.
What do you think reps are then? Like number of sets to a closer? I'm just curious if you had any, from training tons of reps, like what you've seen, like for you, okay, you got a setter.
I think,
how do you know if he's ready to move up?
It's hard because there's so much that goes into it. A lot of it. The first way to look at it is when you shouldn't even be on a team. So that like you should know realistically within the first week that someone's a setter, or within the first 10 calls that someone's a closer, whether or not that person's going to actually stick, right? Or whether they have the competence and ability to actually perform the role. When it comes to ascending somebody, this is one of those where I think realistically people just have it factors that you can see. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but you'll see a setter that can be a closer and you're like, I know it's premature, but I think you're going to be a really good closer, probably better than you are a setter kind of thing. You know? And then you'll see people who are crushing it at setters as a setter that never do well with closing. I think the other thing too is I understand. I understand that it's also an ascension, setter to closer to sales manager, marketer, blah, blah, blah. Right. But at the same time, they're different sports. Like being a setter is a very different skill set than being a closer.
Totally.
Right? And so I also think that it's a little bit broken in the sales world for people to think that you can only be that the next step from setting is closing. Like realistically,
could be setter manager.
Exactly. I know a lot of people who've gone from setter, like really talented people who've gone from setter, they would not have been good closers, but from setter to setter manager to someone on the marketing team to eventually CMO, Yeah. And so the other thing to think about is like, you might be an amazing setter, but you might be a dog shit closer kind of thing. And so it's not like that is necessarily the timescape that you should be looking at, or like, that's the essential.
Well, talk to me about the difference then. Let's say someone's watching this and they're like, dude, I don't know if I should just stick with setting and then ascend that other value or that other ladder, or if I'm going to be a closer. What are the differences between the setters and closers?
So number one is just, okay. So if you're a setter who enjoys the process of conquering objections to get people on a closing call, that's a very closer related skill, right? Let's even take setting down. You have DM setters and you have phone setters. A DM setter is not even close to the same skill that a closer is, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the time you'll see people who are DM setters that don't even want to be on a phone. And so obviously it makes no sense to even look at them as a closer, right? Yeah. And so if you're a DM setter, I think that the next thing to look at would be, copywriting, right? Or there's also this weird little niche that people don't talk about, which is you have copywriters, which everyone thinks is as marketing, but then you also have sales copy. Sales copy is a very different skill set, right? It's people who can create really good outbound sales sequences or direct messages from sales reps, and instead of just marketing material.
I like that.
Yeah, that's a whole nother little niche that people forget even exists in copywriting.
Needed, dude.
Right?
Like so needed.
And bro, some of the most lucrative people I've ever met were really good DM setters that could just create like DM sequences that made a fuck ton of money. And it's like, okay, great. Let's just have you do that instead. Like, let's leverage that skill set,
Totally.
And so that DM setting is a whole different route. Now on phone setting, when it comes down to it, you might be someone who is setting a lot of deals, but you're terrible at like conquering. You're only getting the people that actually kind of, want to hop into it to actually hop on. And so realistically, I would say that, you either have a skill set to learn, or you want to know what I would do, bro? To anyone, if you want an actionable, just to make this as simple as possible, there's a testing site. It's called criteriacorp.com. And you can sign up for a free trial. It's mostly for businesses, but you can sign up for a free trial and you can take a sales disposition test. And there are different things that you're tested on in sales. There's like your, ability to have confrontational conversation, your ability to, your cold calling disposition, your objection handling disposition, all these different dispositions to tell you whether or not you would be a good setter, a good closer, a good manager, et cetera. But at the at the end of the day, closing is not a common skill set. And just because you want to get into sales does not mean that you're supposed to be a closer. There's a lot of ways to get into sales outside of being the person who directly closes calls. There's also a lot of people who would be, who get into sales. They would be good closers, but they'd be much better trainers or operational sales engineers, et cetera. There's so much to it that this whole setting to closing kind of industry, it just like dumbs it down so much that if people only look at those two things rather than all the other things that you can grow into in a company. Does it make sense? I know this is way less actionable than you're probably looking for, but I think that the actionable that I would take beside the criteria core thing is just look at your business, see where the business that you're working with, if you're a sales rep, and see where the needed areas are. Are they and just start working on that instead. Right. Everyone just looks at closer. I want to be a closer. And it's boring.
I think there's such a big opportunity for someone that has the vision to be able to come in and work with, for example, I'm placing about 4 or 5 sales reps this week on fitness offers, right? With influencers that have 150,000, 300,000 real followers on Instagram, millions of views a month. And dude, they don't have a sales team, right? They're selling $200 a month.
Yeah.
So what I'm sharing to them, and I think what you're trying to say is that come in, close deals, but see where else operations, see where else in marketing, see where else your skill set or your proclivity to want to learn and grow.
Yeah.
The business has a need, lead with that value, do it for free, lead with value first, and become so valuable. Kind of there's a great book on this called The Linchpin. Have you read The Linchpin? No.
Haven't.
Dude, such a good book where it talks about how to become just indispensable. Meaning if they get rid of you, you pull the linchpin, the whole business falls apart. Right? So it's a bit dangerous for you as a business owner to have someone like that in your company, but the goal is to have that person if you are a business owner.
The goal is to be the person.
Yeah, the goal is to be the linchpin. Yeah. And if you do have one, then you need to start getting them to document and systematize what they're doing, because then it takes away their linchpin power.
Yeah.
Is at least what I've found.
That's an awesome concept. I like that.
It's really cool, man. So, okay. So talk to me about what you're up to now.
Yeah. It's essentially what you just said, where you're placing teams. Mm-hmm. What I have found is that, so I work in the online space. There's really 2 main things that I work in, marketing agencies or service-based agencies, and then info product. Mm-hmm. There's dropshipping, Amazon, e-comics. I've never played with any of that stuff.
Okay.
And what I focus mostly on now is info product, which is your coaching offers, your biz op, your B2B, et cetera. And in info, there are really 2 types of people who excel with info. People who got really good at running ads. That would be your Cole Gordons, for example. Mm-hmm. Cole is amazing with paid. That'd be traffic and funnels and such. And then you have people who are just really good with organic. That'd be your Iman Gadzhis, your Jaime Agueras, your,
Grego
Gallagher's, Kino Body. That's your organic side. And what I learned is that people, and this isn't by any means a gospel truth, but a lot of the time, the people who do the organic one and then put an info product on the back, to do organic at the level that top tier, influencers do, it's a full-time plus job. You cannot learn how businesses work and still do the organic stuff, because then you're going to get slapped on both, right? So realistically, for you to have a top tier organic following and that's growing, and you have to make sure that you're constantly putting effort and attention into the brand, right? Mm-hmm. And you're consuming so you can create, and you're constantly pouring into that. You're the face. But what that does is it takes away your attention from all the business side of things that actually have to happen. And when people try to do both, you get slapped with both. You can't, run for 2 rabbits, you're going to catch none kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so realistically, what I found is a niche of people that don't have X skill set, which is kind of creating a sales machine, if you will, in their business. So they might have an info product, they might have something that they're trying to sell, and they have a following, but they don't know how to grow it. Yeah. I've started working with people that have that kind of need. It's tricky because since they don't understand the business side, they are very resistant sometimes to some of the stuff you have to do there. But it's essentially the value that skill I've developed over the last couple of years fits that puzzle really well.
Yeah.
So that's what I do now.
Dude, I love that. And the way that I break down pretty much any business in the info product, I mean, really just any business in general, is 3 big buckets. Now there's a couple other ones, but it's marketing, which is generating attention, right? Once you have the attention, right? You're saying the influencers or the people that are really good at paid, the marketers, then you've got the sales or the conversion, like taking that attention, actually converting it, collecting the cash. Once the cash is collected, then the fulfillment or the delivery starts.
Yeah.
Right. And you kind of need to grow all 3 simultaneously. Otherwise, there's another.
And you also have tension between all 3.
You have tension. Exactly. And you can talk about this as you scale, like, okay, boom, tons of leads, but no conversions. You got to like focus on that. And then once you have a ton of sales and your fulfillment lags behind, that can throw the whole thing off.
The way I've always kind of looked, I heard this from someone, I can't remember who, but every business needs 3 people. You can't have one person that does all 3 of these. You can't even really have one person that does 2 of these, but you need someone who gets eyes. So someone who gets eyeballs. Their only job in the business is to get eyeballs. That can be an influencer with organic, that can be a CMO with paid, but getting eyes, getting the marketing stuff, right? I'm going to say what you said, but in just a different way that I think is, at least it clicked for me better, and maybe it'll click for someone listening. So you have someone who gets eyes. Number 2 is you have someone who turns eyes into money, right? And so converting, and you have someone who does the actual business side. So operations, HR, legal, finance, et cetera. You have a business guy, a conversions guy, and then a get eyes guy, right? So the way I call it the way I call it with our business is you have someone who creates eyes, you have eyes to payment, then you have payment or dollars to gold with LTV kind of thing. And so most businesses are one person. Most businesses probably short of $1 million a year, or 1 or 2 people trying to do all 3 of those things. And when you realize that if you just give up one of those things to somebody else that's good at and knows what they're doing, things grow a lot faster, because your split attention with all 3 of those things, or 2 of those things, if you have someone else, your split attention will always lose. Even if you're the best in the world at what you're doing, split attention always loses to focused, disciplined attention, And so the best companies in the world, what they do really well is have one person doing one thing, focused on one responsibility of the business.
I love that. So you think that if you have those 3 types of people, or 3 different people in a business, you've just seen the business grow like much smoother, much exponentially.
The way I look at it, man, genuinely. So number 1, what I've learned, and this is, everyone knows this is on any fortune cookie, but it's so different to like really understand this. And it's hard to explain it other than any other way than other people do it. But a business is 2 things. It's whatever you sell, but it's really just the people inside of it, right? And so my favorite book that I've ever read, this is not to sales reps necessarily, but business owners, is Multipliers by Liz Wiseman, when it comes to the concept of just looking at a business as people who increase the IQ of a business. I'm paraphrasing the book. If you really actually want to understand the book, that's pretty much it. You don't even need to read the book. It's think of your business as an IQ, IQ score, and the more people you have in it that think diversely and have different backgrounds and think of and face problems in different ways, that's your business's IQ score, shared IQ score. And so realistically, what I have learned is that every business has constraints and responsibilities, right? And if you can have, the goal is essentially to have smart people focusing on as few responsibilities and constraints as possible, so that they can conquer as aggressively and as fast as possible what they need to conquer. If you give a really talented person 50 things to work on, it's going to take him a lot longer than if you gave him 2 things to work on, or 1 thing to work on, right? And so when you realize business is speed, and you have all these, and you realize you have all these responsibilities and problems and challenges that you need, covered, then the game becomes, okay, how do I get people to focus on that? And so one of the things that gets entrepreneurs to 100K a month or 500K a month or wherever is being that smart guy who can do everything, cover all the hats, wear all the hats, do it all, blah, blah, blah. Even some, you don't really see people doing $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a month without delegation. But when I say delegation of tasks and some responsibilities and such is very different than delegation of
decisions
and ideation, right? Where is the business going? How do we think about this? That delegation does not come easy to entrepreneurs. But those 3 things that we talked about, where you have to get someone who has eyes, you have to have someone who can liquidate eyes, and then you have to have someone who can actually create the business on the back. Those are all ideating and decision-making parts of the business. And what you see is one person try to do all 3 of those ideating / decision-making parts. Or you see one person try to, at least manage all of them with other people there, et cetera. When you learn as a business owner how to essentially say, this is my lane, I'm just going to work with top tier people to focus on the other things, that's when you see businesses start to skyrocket, genuinely.
Yeah, I love that. I was at an event with Brandon Dawson, Cardone Ventures, right? And one of the things that really stood out to me and it really clicked for me is when I was scaling Kino Body Coaching, we hit a point very quickly, actually within 60 days, we scaled to $380,000 a month. Right. And then we went to, it was like 300,000 and then it was like 280 and then it was like 340, but I couldn't get us past like 350 to 400,000. And
Dan Martell talks about the 3 sticking points in business.
Yeah.
300K, 900K, 2.7.
Yeah. What was it?
3, 9, and 2.7.
3, 9, 2.7. Yeah. So he breaks it down a little bit different. He talks about the 7 break points. And so he actually says 0 to $1 million,
okay,
$1 million to, what is it? Like 3 million, right? And then from 3
a year, correct?
Yeah, a year.
Okay.
3 to 7 million a year, 7 to 15, 15 to 25, 25 to 40, 40 to 75. Well, obviously, you know, you get, I haven't gotten there yet, but he literally breaks down the different step-by-step components and the restructuring. It's literally like reconstructing a whole new business.
It really is.
Bro, it's a whole new business.
It's like shedding skin as a snake, right?
Literally.
You very rarely see people stay in a business from like startup to next phase to next phase to next phase, because every single new phase requires new, just overall new, right? And so like I said, I was asked to resign. I would argue a lot of that was because I definitely had my failures and such, but the new skin of the company had to become it was time for the new thing. Mm-hmm. And so, what gets you to 1 million does not get you to 10 million, does not get you to 100 million kind of thing. Right. And so and what's kind of fucked about it is it's almost the exact opposite of what got you to X stage is what gets you to Y stage. And so, it's almost like you have to learn how to do something really well to learn how to now do the exact opposite in order to keep progressing. And so growth is very counterintuitive as you start to play the multi-100,000, multi-million per month mark.
Yeah. Game. Dude, totally. And to kind of wrap up that point, like that's where I found myself as a leader falling into a bottleneck because I was ideating and making decisions on all 3 categories. Right. I was leading the growth on all 3 and I would just bounce around from each one as it broke. Right. Oh, sales is broken. Go back over here. Oh, we need more leads. Okay. We got to fix the fulfillment. Instead of putting in place 3 leaders that I manage, 3 people that I work closely with. And I was getting close. I was almost there. And then Greg's just like, dude, he's like, I just want to create like an automated system, the Sam Ovens school model. But dude, I mean, it was such a cool experience. And like, that's my goal is I want to break past that next break point and go from like 300,000 a month to 700,000 a month. Yeah. Like that's where I really want to, and I think that that's the ability, like you were saying when we were chatting one-on-one, the ability to attract really great talent and then cast the vision and align on values and align on purpose. And so we're going to chat more about that off camera, but dude, great podcast. I really appreciate you coming all the way out here, man. You came a long ways, dude, 5-6 hours. So I really respect it. Is there anything you feel like we haven't covered?
I'll say one more relative point so people understand the 3 things, right? Okay. The biggest name I think in the sales space / business space right now is Hormozi. Mm-hmm. If you think about Hormozi in his company, he has Hormozi, who doesn't really do much anymore with actual day-to-day of acquisition.com. He just gets eyes. I would argue that if you looked at Hormozi's calendar, 95 to 99% of it's probably camera, content, something, right? You have Layla Hormozi, who I don't think she's necessarily the liquidator, but she's that third person, that business person. She probably does all the back end stuff of the business, right? And then you probably have someone, I don't know who it is. I don't know her, acquisition.com that well, acquisition.com. I feel like I'm slurring. That probably carries that second hat kind of thing. But if you look at a really good example of how they divide and conquer, that's a more studyable example for people to go look into. If they
want. I love it, man. Cool. Anything else though that you feel like we didn't cover that you want to share with the audience, like young guys, sales guys looking to get into it?
Put your head down, bro. Keep working. Wait 2 more years to do anything than you really think it should take kind of thing. Speed is this is the video name. Speed is the enemy kind of thing. Sometimes you want to move slow. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but to do really good things, sometimes you have to nurture and sow. As a Christian, you have to sow the soil and you have to work the ground for a long time before anything can really grow. And so if you try to sprout up really fast, you're going to die down really fast too. And so take your time to really build skill set and to be patient. And I promise you, it almost always pays dividends.
Yeah, I love that. Cool, man. Well, I know that people watching this are going to want to get more of you. I know you're coming out with tons of podcasts and content. Where can my audience get more Paul Daley?
Instagram. Okay. Paul Daley. Right now it's Paul J. Daley. By the time this drops, it should be at Paul Daley.
Okay, Paul Daley. Nice.
Paul Daley. And
okay, sweet.
That's it.
Yes.
Nothing else.
Send Paul some love if you're watching this and share this with a friend, right? We bring this podcast to you. No advertisers as of the time of this video, right? It's just pure value. I want you to share this with someone that you feel like could get a lot of value from understanding the 3 different phases that you grow through as a sales rep. And we'll see you guys on the next podcast.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.